Phase 1 of the campaign is told from the perspective of Margrave Sheridan Douglas, who, at the time of the operation, was the commanding officer of the 12th Vegan Rangers stationed in the system. A call to arms. The job of a field commander is to impose order on chaos, as chaos is the natural environment of the battlefield. The officer who is the most successful at bending the environment to his will must inevitably prevail, regardless of the strength of the opposition. The only possible explanation for our victory lies with the training of our field commanders. We teach each officer that concentrations of mechs or firepower do not win battles. Control wins battles, and allows a commander to withhold his attack until the precise moment. Control gives him the ability to pick out the weak spot in the enemy line. The only time we were in danger of losing Galtor was when we lost control. In the beginning, the situation on Galtor 3 looked as bleak as a fueling station on an ice asteroid. Our original plan called for 2 strong regiments to lie in wait for any Kurita raiding party, trap the raiders on the ground, and destroy them in a series of short, swift thrusts. Give the Combine a bloody nose, and send them on their way. No one prepared for the months of campaigning that followed. Because of mishaps and miscommunication, only my regiment, the Alpha Regiment of the 12 Vegan Rangers, was at full strength when the Kurita regiments appeared. Bits and pieces of other units were available, but they were strung out over the entire planet. The Kurita army had double its required number of dropships. Except for fighter support, these ships were empty to carry the valuables from the Star League inventory. I just want to cut in here before we get into the meat of the first phase, because there's going to be a lot of names mentioned and a lot of units spoken about, but not a lot of clarification throughout, obviously, because it'll assume you'll have looked at the order of battle. So it'll be on the screen here, and if you want to be able to review it at all at any time, obviously you might want to go back or possibly have this open in a separate tab just to be able to quick reference if need be. But we have the House Davian units with the 12 Vegan Rangers with their CO Margrave Sheridan Douglas, who we'll be hearing a lot of their perspective in this first section. His regimental battle group was on the Union dropship Velasquez, which was in orbit. There was Bragg's battalion, which was in their Overlord dropship, the Santiago. Johnston's battalion was based in the Wagnall Plain around the real Star League storehouse, and McCulloch's battalion was at New Derry. The 33rd Avalon Hussars, with their CO Lieutenant General Wilson Mandella, plays an important part here. His regimental battle group was based in the Wagnall Plain, 10 kilometres from the fake Star League storehouse, alongside Benham's battalion. Meade's battalion, who had the Union dropship Century City, also had the Union dropship Pantanon, that was 2 weeks away from Galtor, and Lyon's battalion, which were on their Union dropship the Atlan, with that Union dropship, Wait a Minute, as it was called, was 3 days from reaching orbit. So they were a reduced strength company. The 22nd Special Air Squadron were based at the airfield at the 33rd Avalon base, the Davian Guard Auxiliary were guarding the fake Star League depot, the Dahar Draconis March Militia with their CO General Sir William Dobson. Their regimental group was based in New Derry. There was Pope's battalion, 1 company, based in Wagnall Plain, 10 kilometres from the Star League storehouse, and 2 companies were at the refueling station on Galtor's moon. Sumner's battalion was at Wuhan Pass with 1 company, with a further 2 companies at New Wuhan City. French's battalion only had a single company, they were based on Marduk. 2 other companies were destroyed in a suspected sabotage of a dropship. Then there was the Galtor Irregulars. These consisted of Owen Rowe O'Neill's Legion, which were based in the Wagnall Plain at the 33rd Avalon Hussars camp. Then there was the Marquis of Ormond's battalion at the Changli Pass, General Lao Yaoxiang's brigade at New Derry, the Galtor Flying Squadron, based in Wagnall Plain, also at the 33rd Avalon Hussars camp, and then the Lone Wolves Mercenary Unit, outside New Derry. On the Dragon side of things, we had the 17th Benjamin Regulars with their General Siovo Yoriyoshi. The regimental battle group, Elzar's battalion, Gonan's battalion were all based around the fake Star League depot where they dropped. Sharon's battalions remained in orbit, and the Imperial Artillery were also dropped near the fake Star League depot. Their Special Air Squadron with their CO Colonel Sirius Golan were in the upper atmosphere on defence orders. The 3rd Benjamin Regulars with their CO Brigadier General Jokodo Nagochido, they were all dropped in the fake Star League depot, which consisted of the regimental battle group, Ismail's battalion, Shazli's battalion, and then there was Gamasi's battalion, who were in orbit. The 23rd Galtor regulars, with their CO Brigadier General Yarvek Dolmasi, the Earl of Marlow, their regimental battle group were near New Derry. With Van Kapellen's battalion, 1 company in orbit and 2 companies near New Derry, Warren's battalion, the same, and Reed's battalion, with 1 company in orbit and 2 companies at the Wuhan Pass. Then there was Morushi's Independent Assault Battalion, who went to attack Marduk. So, just to clear that up, for anyone who needs it, gives you a little bit of an idea, but the main names at the moment to keep in mind are Sheridan Douglas and his position, the name of Wilson Mandella, who is in charge of most of the defence in this early part, and then we have the likes of, obviously, General Yoriyoshi, and outside of that we've also got a few interesting characters like Nagochido and some of their antics during this fight. But we'll move on now. Strategic situation. Strategically, the Kurita attack was a masterpiece of misdirection. When a host of combined dropships entered Galtor 3's atmosphere, an assault battalion attacked the Marduk system, effectively cutting it off from immediate reinforcements. Meanwhile, along the Kurita-Davian border, Kurita forces bustled with activity, causing nervous border commanders to jam New Avalon's military communication stations with calls for reinforcements. A Kuritan spy sabotaged the jump station near Robinson, draining the jump charge and causing delays of up to 172 hours. Amid the chaos, our calls for assistance were ignored. The Combine quickly penetrated our weak air defense and began dropping all over the planet. The main Kurita threat manifested at the fake depot. They bought the plan like it was a gold mine from Aunt Sarah. 2 regiments landed within 3 kilometers of the trap and quickly spread out toward the base. Obviously, they didn't expect much opposition. Many battalion commanders landed their dropships without sending a scout party first. Overhead, Kuritan Slayer and Shylone fighters routed the few Sparrowhawks opposing them, and then began strafing runs on the fake Star League base. Nothing went right that day. Communications were more fouled up than a henhouse after the fox left. Kurita was in greater strength than we could imagine. Worst of all, our orbital position left us 300 miles from the main battle. Nevertheless, I was confident. Kurita had walked right into the trap without suspecting a thing. If we could cause enough damage, we might get them to retreat. The fake depot was a small, fortified position surrounded by 12 bands of landmines, designed to slow, immobilize, and disrupt any attacking force. Covering the minefields and sighting for the artillery in the 33rd Hussars base camp were 24 wheeled scout cars, heavily shielded with electronic countermeasures against detection. I entrusted the defense of the fake Star League depot to a company from Prince Davian's heavy infantry regiments, the 782nd Davian Guard Auxiliary. They were good men, willing to die for the Prince. Attached to each squad was a sniper artillery piece. No battle mechs were within the perimeter. Supporting the position, 3 batteries of Long Tom artillery hid in hardened prefab silos at the 33rd Hussars Regimental Battle Group's base camp. Most of the 33rd Avalon Air Lancers defended these guns from attack. The first attacks. Elazar's battalion of Yoriyoshi's 17th Benjamin Regulars led the attack. The lead company were equipped with advanced electronic probes, or AEP, specifically designed to spot mines. The AEPs effectively cut a path through the first band of minefields in less than 15 minutes. To counter this move, the Davian Guard spotters called artillery and airstrikes against these mechs. While Elazar's Panthers neutralized the spotters, the 3rd Benjamin Regulars attacked the depot from the other side of the perimeter. The 3rd had no AEP and were bogged down with many damaged units. The smoke from these burning mechs attracted the attention of the 22nd Air Assault Squadron's K-10 Stukas, which wreaked holy havoc among the giant war machines struggling in the minefields. Meanwhile, Brigadier General Naguchido, commander of the 3rd, had dropped into an orchard where he somehow overheated his mech and couldn't be reached for 6 hours. The air war would then intensify over the 33rd Avalon Hussars base camp. As General Mandella became increasingly nervous, he made the first of a number of mistakes. I hate knocking a man who gave his all, but it's a lesson in the loss of control. Worried that the airstrikes compromised his secrecy, he hesitated for almost an hour before trying to contact me. Of course, I couldn't break radio silence while most of my regiment floated in vulnerable dropships, At this point, all I could do was watch, and sweat it out. Finally, Mandella moved his troops out. The attack force consisted of the 33rd Avalon Hussars, RBG, Benham's Battalion, Cheese Company of Light Mechs from the Dahar Draconis March Militia, and a collection of native defense forces that were basically useless. On paper, the force would seem sufficient for victory. In reality, General Yoriyoshi had the upper hand. Although Yoriyoshi didn't land with the first assault wave, he quickly sized up the situation. One battalion was strung out and pinned down in minefields, another was struggling to regroup. The regimental battle group had dropped with Yoriyoshi, and the 3rd Battalion floated in the orbital reserve. Brigadier General Nagochido's absence prevented him from consolidating his forces, but he proved his brilliance as a field commander with his next action. Correctly suspecting a trap, he analysed the trajectory of the incoming Federated Sun artillery shells and gathered all the troops he could to defend against an attack from that direction. He issued orders to Elazar's battalion to break off its attack and join the RBG. Until then, the regimental battle group and the scattered troops of Gonan's battalion would hold out. As far as we know, he never considered using his orbital reserve battalion to help with the defense. He'd already earmarked that battalion for attack. Mandella then launched his attack about an hour after Yoriyoshi landed. At first, he brushed aside the light mechs sent out in a picket line. Once again, however, he misstepped by ordering the long-range artillery to support his attack. This instantly freed Elazar's battalion, which had been pinned down by the batteries. Yoriyoshi chose a position astride the main road to make his stand. On his left were a series of small hills covered in forest. His right was cut with streams and the Salt Lick River, which allowed his mechs to overburn at will. In the centre, he placed his strongest lancers, including his own Dragon Heavy Battle Mech. Benham's assault and heavy companies struck this Kurita position, hoping to smash through the flank and take the strong hilltop positions. While artillery thudded around it, Yoriyoshi's lance stood its ground, knee-deep in the cooling water of the Salt Lick River and blasting every enemy mech in sight. As the losses mounted, the situation grew quite desperate for both sides. The Kurita right flank wavered, then fled to the safety of a small line of hills. After capturing a bridge across the Salt Lick, the tracked units of Owen Roe O'Neill's legion surged forward. If General Mandella had had the troops to exploit the breakthrough, the battle might have turned out differently. Elazar's battalion arrived in strength, however, and immediately attacked the exposed position of O'Neill's legion. Within 10 searing minutes, most of O'Neill's units were reduced to burning wrecks. Yoriyoshi immediately ordered Elazar's battalion to turn and smash the Davian centre. The exhausted Davian mechs in Benham's battalion gave ground slowly. Then Mandella made his 3rd mistake that day. To cover his retreat, he threw in his last reserve too soon. Freelam's company of light mechs would move forward as Benham's battalion withdrew. Now Yoriyoshi played his final ace. From out of the skies, Sharon's battalion dropped directly behind the retreating battalions. The Galtor flying squadron instantly broke and fled the field, and caught in the crossfire like a brace of pigeons, Freelam's company were destroyed to the last. Realizing his mistake, General Mandella ordered the RBG to retreat and turned to face his pursuers alone. Although his Crusader was no match for the heavy mechs of Elazar's battalion, he stood his ground for 15 precious minutes, while the remains of Benham's battalion and the 33rd Hussars RBG escaped. His body was never recovered. Other battles. As General Mandella gave his life to save his regiment, a company of Sharon's battalion struck the 33rd Hussars base, blasting the artillery pieces and capturing large amounts of equipment and supplies. Air Lancers operating from the base flew the 7,000 miles to New Delhi. Other battles raged over the continent. In the battle for the fake depot, the 3rd Benjamin Regulars, now reunited with their commander, broke through the minefields and started attacking the dropships. The Davian Guard auxiliary fought on courage alone, attacking mechs with just hand weapons and incendiaries. The last dozen or so men went underground into a maze of tunnels built to trap the Kurita mechs. Instead of following them, Brigadier General Nagochido collapsed the tunnels, killing the guards. The Draconis Combine's 21st Galadon regulars landed near New Delhi, except for 2 companies detailed to take Wuhan Pass on the other side of the continent. Expecting minimal resistance, Kurita dropship techs didn't fire probes or adequately scan the landing sites. Certainly, the poor mech warriors didn't expect to land smack in the middle of a mercenary encampment, especially an encampment of the malevolent Lone Wolves. The Lone Wolves cut many of the first assault mechs to pieces. One Lone Wolf mech warrior, Arthur Big Booty Stetson, particularly delighted in the carnage. Big Booty operated a hatchetman mech with its head painted white and black like a leering skull. He roamed the battlefield, smashing the cockpits of damaged Kirita mechs with his 2-ton axe while screaming about scalps. Other Lone Wolves acted no less bloodthirsty. Surprised and confused by the suddenly hot landing zone, the 21st quickly fell back, Warren's battalion limping away from the firefight with 60% casualties, surviving only because the wolves began fighting each other for salvage rights. However, Kirita mech warriors achieved complete surprise in the Wuhan Pass. The defenders, caught outside their machines, died to the last. The 2 companies of Reed's battalion captured 7 of the 12 mechs intact and fully armed. The death of General Mandella forced me to take command of the forces of Galtor 3. I didn't want the job, the situation plainly distressed me. Reports filtered in that even more Draconis Combine mechs were landing near the fake base. Computer estimates figured that we faced 4 regiments on the ground already, with another wave of dropships at the system's jump point, a mere 3 days away. Concentration of force is vital against so powerful a foe. I determined that we had enough mechs to defend only 1 point. I chose the real Star League storehouse. As night fell on the continent, I landed with Alpha Regiment's RBG and ordered McCulloch's battalion to leave New Delhi for the Middle Way Pass near the real Star League storehouse. The Dahar DMM Regimental Battle Group and the motorized elements of General Lao Yao Xiang's brigade prepared to follow the next day. To gain the initiative as quickly as possible, the rest of Sumner's battalion in New Wuhan City and 2 companies of Johnston's battalion of the 12 Vegan Rangers would move to retake Wuhan Pass. Meanwhile, the Marquis of Ormond's battalion moved to the Star League storehouse. I divided our air lancers to defend our dropships and the airports in New Wuhan City and New Delhi. The Draconis Combine reacted to the new situation slowly. Intercepted communiques and interviews with captured mech warriors gave us only incomplete pictures. Apparently, General Yoriyoshi's staff identified the dropship Velasquez and correctly deduced that the 12 Vegan Rangers were lurking somewhere on planet. They also decided that the Rangers were responsible for the nasty reception that the 21st Galadon regulars received that morning. Yoriyoshi couldn't believe that the camp was fake. He assumed that we stripped the base, destroyed the evidence, and cached the contents somewhere on the planet. Throughout the rest of the campaign, he maintained that he had captured the correct base even when confronted with evidence that contradicted this. The old boys in Luthien broke out the champagne after the first battle reports arrived. The field commanders portrayed the attack as an unqualified success. No one mentioned a fake Star League depot. Yoriyoshi merely requested more troops to ensure that the Federated Sun's presence is totally eradicated from Draconis Combine soil. The request was granted instantly. The 5th Galadon regulars, commanded by Yoriyoshi's rival, Galadon District Warlord General Samsonov, would land in 3 days, followed closely by the 8th Galadon regulars. A force of 5 regiments would ensure the destruction of the 12th Vegan Rangers.